He's currently pursuing his part-time PhD at PES. He has been instrumental in arranging today's session, and we thank him for his valuable initiative. We are equally honored to welcome Professor Prasad B. Honawali, Director of PESU ISFCR and IoT Research Center at PS University. A very warm welcome to all the faculty members and students, both present in person and those joining us online from EC Campus. Now let me take a moment to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Mr. Manoj Krishna Susila. Mr. Manoj is the Vice President of Compute Server Firmware Engineering at HPE, and he also serves as the head of HPE's India R&D site. Over his 24 years with HPE, he has led engineering teams spread across India, US, and Taiwan. His technical expertise spans over BMC and BIOS firmware, firmware manageability solutions, cloud and composable infrastructure, network virtualization, switching technologies, and operating system drivers. Beyond these achievements, he has also been a strategic leader, driving culture, collaboration, and innovation across HPE's global business units. Today, he will be speaking on a very timely and futuristic theme, cybersecurity in the era of generative AI and post-quantum cryptography. This is a subject that is shaping the next generation of secure systems and is highly relevant for all of us here. Without further delay, I request Mr. Manoj to take the stage and deliver his talk. Please give him a big round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. So nice to see you here. This college is connected to me in various forms, actually. And it was a great pleasure to come here and address you people, and especially on this timely topic. So before I start, I really wanted to say a big thanks to Dr. Prasad sir for inviting me and presenting this content, Dr. Preet ma'am, and my dear friend Soma, who has actually instigated me to come here and give this talk. So cybersecurity is something which is going to, the day the cybers really started, really the networking started, really the computer engineering started, the security threats have come a long way from there. And today, even with all the changes which we are seeing it from the world of AI, the threats are only going to increase, as you see that. So what I'm trying to cover today, yes, that's a threat. So what I'm trying to cover today is mostly just a surface. This is a very deep ocean if you really wanted to get in. And we will not be having time to cover all those topics. And I know that most of you have taken cybersecurity as one of your those opportunities towards the end. But this is an amazing field, and let's get started with that. Okay? And let's keep it interactive if possible. Don't stop yourself from asking questions. I love to hear questions because I would love to always keep these sessions more of an interactive rather than a monologue, because I know even though it is in the morning time, after 10 minutes, after 15 minutes, you will doze off, right? So I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. So let's start with some interesting facts. So from an agenda perspective, I'll keep it very simple. We will just touch upon the evolving landscape of cyber, especially in the AI world. We'll talk about what are the various generative AI-enabled attacks can come today. Then very interesting subject on PQC, the post-quantum cryptography. And the last, some of the opportunities which you can pursue going forward, actually, right? So before I get in deeper in that, I just wanted to hear from you. Have you ever imagined a world without a cybersecurity? Anyone? How will the world look like if you don't have a cybersecurity? Any thoughts on saying what can happen? Fully chaotic. Anyone else? Yes, no privacy, no safeguarding of data. There is no security anything, right? So whatever you do, bank transactions, even starting with just getting out of the house itself, you are under threat. So why don't we just take a quick look at a video, just make you a little interesting.
Now that I think about it, there were a few signs. Something was not right. But I couldn't quite put my finger on it.
A whole series of bugs are affecting the principal transport networks and several major computer systems this morning. A number of international airports have been closed as a precaution for the...
Take your coat, grab your...
Further information about what seems to be a global IT crisis have been confirmed.
Sudden access to confidential data of many large companies has plunged global
into the red this morning, causing panic across the financial markets.
This could very well be the worst hacking in the history of the world. While many IT systems are not functioning this morning, paralyzing cities around the world, we have heard reports...
New revelations in the Kelly Adams scandal following the publication of a private email.
Teenagers all over the world are shocked to see their idol in such...
I can care less about Callie Adams, to be frank. And anyway, it was high time to go to work.
Your estimated time is approximately 8 days and 45 minutes.
Would you stop your guns if I had you on my side? Come and seal your flame till the end of my desire.
Yes, the industrial security of this site cannot be assured today. We've therefore taken some exception.
Video surveillance systems are down, so they had to stop all subway activity for now.
Say the world is going through the worst IT crisis ever. Marie?
What we're experiencing right now really comes down to sudden and complete lack of cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity? What, I mean, there's a firewall on my computer, there's a password on my phone, I had it covered. And I had so much more on my plate.
I'm sorry, we won't be able to operate on anyone today. No, yes, we're having some technical problems. We can't access the files of any of our patients.
Is there any way we could...
Oh, don't worry about your dad. Everything should be fine.
Oh, I see.
What did you say his name was again?
Hello.
There was no way I was not going to go see my dad. But first, I had to get something to eat.
It's okay, you've paid already, sir.
Already? What?
Yeah, along with the washing machine, the TV, and the cuddly toy.
Oh, come on. I'd never done anything like that. In any case, I still needed to find some means of transportation.
Transport networks and several major computer systems this morning.
And so even basic communication is proving extremely difficult. We've been informed that even many political leaders cannot be reached at this time.
Since being confronted by this exceptional situation, armed forces have been placed on high alert for the past 24 hours.
No vehicle connection.
And this is how I got here. Matter of fact, I still don't know where I am. As for this light, it might not last long. What a day it's been. And what I do not understand is why me? Why does this kind of thing always happen to me?
You saw the chaotic environment in which we are going to be living. Just 1 minute. You saw the chaotic environment which we will be living in if there's no cybersecurity. This is just an exaggeration of the situation. Actually, when you look at every aspect of your life is now connected to something to do with networking, something to do with the computers, something to do with the back-end processing. So what happens if all of them gets broken? All of them gets into some kind of a cyber attack. That's what this environment is going to be look like, right? And it's not going to stop here. We don't even know what will happen to some of the situations like nuclear warheads, right? One mistake is good enough, or there is a, the keys with the wrong hand is good enough to annihilate the world, right? So this is the situations which can end up into cybersecurity. This is the situation even there is no cybersecurity in the world going forward. So now, how do you prevent that? That's essentially the topic which we want to touch upon today. And also, with the introduction of AI into this world, with the introduction of the capabilities AI is bringing to the world, what kind of changes which is bringing to the whole of the cyber attack and cyber threats? That's what we are going to touch upon that. Just quickly getting into some of the numbers about, there is $10.5 trillion is been expected to be projected cost of cybercrime by 2025. Can you even imagine, this is almost two times or more than 2 times the GDP of the whole of India, right? So that's the amount of money getting spent on various cybercrime activities, which includes the physical damages, which includes the legal damages, which includes all kind of the cost which is incurred because of the cyber attacks, right? Of that, 80% of the cybercrimes are phishing attacks and in the technology sector, especially in the technology sector. And this is another key aspect is because this is one area where AI is really going to touch and create major havoc actually. And today itself, if you really look at, and the data, whatever you're seeing is not purely with AI in the world, AI in the picture, but with AI coming together, without even AI itself, 85% of these attacks are being on phishing side, and AI plays a bigger role in the phishing attacks. 30 billion is the cost of the crypto crime. This is very specific to the crypto breakages. The situations where the crypto modules getting broken, crypto is being misused, crypto is being stolen. 30 billion is the amount which is being currently identified by 2025, the cost which is incurring because of the crypto issues. $1.5 trillion earned by the criminals just by having cryptocurrency. Great job, right? But this is the threat, I think we are all facing it. Now, looking further, there is entirely a new way of security threats are coming to the world with the AI is coming to the picture. What you see in the diagram, what you see in the picture here is, whatever is seeing the blue is already an existing today's threat aspects. So you split the cybersecurity into 3 aspects. The threat vector, the measures how you are preventing that one, and what are the various attack types. So if you really look at the blue ones which you are seeing today, which are the human and the system penetrations, already today, right? Without AI itself, you would see that when a lot of cyber attacks are happening. I just touched upon the numbers in the previous slide. So there are a lot of threat attacks are happening without even the AI intervention itself. Now with AI coming to the picture, the whole the paradigm is changing with the new kinds of attacks coming to the play. What are the new kinds of the attacks coming that one? Model theft. So you understand that one in the AI models forms as the basis of any AI system, right? The models are the ones which is getting trained to provide you the information what you needed. Models are the one which is being used to get you the information what you need from an AI system. Theft on that. Somebody could steal that model, could replace that with something else, can give you an entirely different results from whatever you're asking for. Could be a model inference actually, right? So you get that model done, so model is trained and is passed on to the inference systems, but the inference side, it is getting manipulated. So the model is working very fine. So this is again the supply chain of the AI systems. The model gets created, model has been passed for inferencing, and then the consumer uses that actually, right? At the inferencing side, it could be manipulated. Now, that's another major threat which is coming to the newer attack world. Model outcome manipulation, especially via inversion. What does this inversion really means that? So you all getting used to this generative AI, right? So most of you are using ChatGPT or multiple other tools, whatever Perplexity, all those tools you guys are using it. Now, each time you put a query, you get a result back. Now, you can set up a system to produce maximum query to figure out saying how the pattern is going to look like. The reverse engineering, what we used to call in the system software, right? So the whole model could be reverse engineered to figure out saying that how the model has been set up. So this is another major threat is coming, it's called model outcome manipulation. And the biggest threat going to come is from the data poisoning. What is the fundamental building block of any AI system? It's the data, right? Without data, there is no AI. Now, what happens if there is one data gets manipulated or has been poisoned, the whole outcome of the inference, what you get out of it, or whole modeling, what you get out of it, completely get manipulated, right? And the simplest way to think is a chain reaction really happens when you really do a pattern management and pattern selection in an AI system. Each element, each time a new parameter is getting addressed or being consumed to figure out what should be the next parameter or what should be the next course it should go to. If there's a change in one of the parameter, that should be good enough to deviate the results extremely different. All right? So these are the entirely new sets of attacks which is coming in. And the threat vector perspective, beyond the human and the system penetration side, there are now query attacks actually. The request responses could be a targeted way of attacking the system. Or you can have malicious input or perturbations. Actually, there is a digital as well as a physical, where you modify the content in order to get a different results, right? And the threat vector is changing. The attack types are changing. Same way, how do you prevent is also changing. The security measures also will change. And that's what I think we need to be really start doing that going forward. And especially when you look at the security measures perspective, the AI model integrity has to be completely thorough going forward. Similarly, AI data integrity. These are the two factors from the AI perspective. The security measures has to change. And this is where most of the energy and the effort by the security teams or security teams looking to make sure that only AI is working as expected. Now, as I mentioned, you're all using these generative AIs for various purposes. What kind of the attacks can really happen? Have you thought about that? How the generative AIs can create attacks? Anyone? I did give a quick view about that in the previous slide, but then I would like to hear some of the thought process what you have. Anyone? Deepfake? Excellent. I can't hear you. Social engineering, yes. What else? Be a little more louder, please. Agentic AI is not really a threat. That is the way we are heading to it, right? That is essentially processing the data. The way there is an agent which we create in order to process the data. Now, the generative AIs, as somebody was talking about here, the deepfake is one of the great examples of how the generative AI can become a threat for all of us. Looking at that, what is really generative AI functions if you really look at? You have a set of data elements. You process that, you model that, and then it can be inferred by the consumer through the prompts, right? So whatever the prompt engineering, whatever you're trying to put it, you will get the information out of that. So that's essentially the generative AI, the whole way it is works. You have a large set of data, the data gets modeled, and modeled data is being inferred, and that you use and collect the information through your prompting, right? So this is the sequence that with generative AI really flows. Now, some limitations out of that is essentially what will happen is this generative AI can be very biased, right? It's all depending upon how the data is going to look like. Now, that's the limitation also. And that's a security threat also. The reason is being, if the data itself is been wrong, whatever information you get out of that is completely going to be wrong, right? And the whole philosophy of the generative AI works is how the data has been maintained or manipulated. And in order to understand how do you address this problem, it is important for you to understand saying that what are the capabilities you are trying out of that particular generative AI systems and what are its weaknesses. These two aspects you really have to study in order to understand and come up with a solution which could help in solving this AI security problem. So somebody was talking about the deepfake. Absolutely, deepfake is a major threat. What other threat can happen from generative AI? So look at from the phishing messages. I did talk about 80% of the cyber attacks today happens on industry through the phishing messages. AI is a great way to create a phishing messages, and it's very, very, very difficult for us to track it. Even today's IT security softwares will not be able to catch the phishing mails which is coming from an AI because they are so genuine the way it is looking, right? So that is one of the bigger threats. The phishing attacks can go double, triple, whatever the extent, exponentially it can grow with AI taking control of it. Deepfake content for the attacks and enhanced social engineering. Another area it will come is that AI-driven malware generation. So ransomware and malware, the two other threats which is very critical for the IT industry. Pretty much every industry, anywhere the computer is being used, these two way of attacks can really bring down the system. You heard about Trojans, right? So most of you have heard the word Trojan horses actually. So of that, the Trojans really is a malware which sits inside your computer, which sits inside your system, and it gets triggered at some point in time. You'll never know when it is going to happen actually, right? And it wait for a time period. It wait for a time at which it can hit it, and once it is hit, you're done. AI can easily recreate malware code content, and it can implant into your code actually. Very difficult. And one of the easiest way to do is that, can you think of, most of you probably ought to be using Copilot, right? Copilot generates the code. So it generates the code, and if you are blindly taking this code and integrating that with the rest of your source code or rest of your product actually, you never know if somebody has implanted a malware along with that one. Very difficult to figure it out. These are the threats the industry is going to face actually going forward. Because the adoption of these, the code generation tools, like Copilot, like whatever the other tools which is nowadays I think very popular, it is very difficult for a human eye to detect that when there is something is wrong with that code. There is something which is malware sitting as part of this code, which is what we've been talked by code, obfuscation. These very, very hard for traditional systems because traditional systems are not built to figure out saying that, okay, this is a legitimate code or this is something which has been a risky code actually, right? I mean, they have been built on the human way of coding it. Let's put it that way. Because all these code tools today, the security tools today, if you really look at, they have been built over the last many decades, and they're all built based on how the human interface, human interact, and how the humans write the code. So the whole software which is going to detect there's a malware there is some other issue there, is been based on certain assumptions saying that, okay, if a person is writing, he will always think this way, and this is how it is going to be written. But when an AI writing, it can detect these areas of patterns and come up with a code basis, which very difficult for a software to detect it actually. And the complexity with automation coming to the picture, so because nowadays I think everything is a pipeline. So you heard about this pipeline, code generation pipelines, right? So you start the generation, it automatically gets merged into the code, it gets reviewed, it gets run in the pipeline testing, and finally it gets deployed. This is the setup which is most of the organizations are now getting into. This is called code development pipeline. Starting from the coding till the deployment, everything is handled by automated processes, right? And now the complexity because of the AI coming to the picture is increased multifold actually at this point in time because it can introduce risk at any point in time. Now, looking at these kind of examples in the AI world, especially with the generative AI, as well as from the generic AI approaches actually used in the various industries, what kind of challenges, what kind of a risk which we are going to see it? Adversarial attacks and model manipulation. AI is, as I mentioned, is purely based on the data it has. So it has a lot of statistical content in that, right? So the statistical nature of the AI systems, and it's very difficult to distinguish between legitimate and risky code actually. This is one of the biggest threats we are going to see in the AI world. Another one is evasion attacks. Basically, everything looks very normal to your human eyes, right? You will never figure it out saying that something is fishy in the whole of the code which has been written by AI because it understood how the code is been getting generated, how the previous portion of the code, how is the post portion of the code. In between, it could easily plug in a code piece which you will find it very difficult to distinguish between them, right? And the data poisoning attacks which I talked about, because data is the center of the whole of the AI system. And if I can poison that, when I say poison in the sense, if I can corrupt that data, the whole outcome, the whole output which is coming out of the data can be entirely different. Bias in the AI systems, it can always lead to the unfair and incorrect decisions, impacting especially the security aspects very negatively. Another area is this data quality and privacy issues. We touched about, because anything and everything in the AI really talk about the quality of the data becomes the criticality of that actually, right? So you make sure that when you have an extremely high quality data, you have the protection of this data. It also becomes very critical from the security standpoint actually. And this is another challenge. How do you save your data? So every day, petabytes of data gets generated in each industry, right? Whether you take IT industry, whether you take automobile industry, whether you take even a day-to-day education industry, the amount of data gets generated is in petabytes. Now, each of this data, how do you save it properly? If you're not able to save them properly, it is essentially is equivalent to saying that, okay, somebody can easily manipulate the data. And again, go back to the sanity of the data in order to come out with the outcome of that, right? So another area where you will start seeing is this, the last bullet I was read, the LLMs to revealing system prompts, training data, etc. So take a system, keep on asking the same question, right? Take a ChatGPT, ask the same question. You will definitely going to see 10 different answers, right? All will be related answers, but in 10 different ways it is going to give the answers. Why are you getting 10 different answers for the same question? Same input, 10 different outputs. Why? It is because the path it traverses differs each time, right? Each path has its own weightage, and it decides saying that which path, weighted path it should take it, and it comes to a conclusion saying that, okay, this seems to be the best approach part. So each time it asks you to, should I regenerate? You said, yes, go ahead and regenerate. You continuously doing that in a system. You will automatically detect saying that what would be the next statement going to look like. You should be able to derive out of it actually. Because at the end of the day, there's a finite number of cases it can travel today, right? And that's where the parameters, the billions of the parameters when you have it in a model, the data becomes more secure, the more detailed. But today, you can actually do a reverse engineering by keep on prompting it. As a homework, you should go and try to do this actually. Open the ChatGPT and keep on giving one question. And you see how many different variants of answers you are getting it. And then you can actually, at some point in time, you should be able to predict saying that how it is going to answer that actually next. Because each path it takes, it has a weight associated with it, and then you keep on trying it out. You know that what would be the next weight it is going to pick it up actually. Over-reliance of automation and the lack of transparency, right? So the excess dependency on the AI automation increases the risk and demands human oversights and ensures safety. This is another point which I was telling. Now, most of the industry is getting into a state saying that I just wanted to put everything in automated fashion. I have the pipeline. The pipeline will take care of running the whole code for me. And what happens because of that? You are blindly trusting the system to do the right thing, which is okay. But you need to have checks and balances to make sure that the output which is coming out of the systems meeting your standard, first thing, making sure that it is secure to use it. Third, there's no intervention happen in that system. So the last but one bullet, right? This is the best topic actually, I like it. It's the non-deterministic behavior of the AI solution. Different responses for the same inputs and the same response for the different inputs. This is because the way the patterns has been created, the way the parameters have been traversed, the way the model has been set up. You can define a model by continuous retry. And you think about that, a system is put in place, like not a regular system, maybe a supercomputer, or a quantum computer, which we'll talk about that a little later. If you put in place, it can process the data in amazing speed, right? And when you have that kind of a system, and you keep on putting one data element, you know that how the data is going to do. I mean, generally in the human way, you may be having difficulty to do it, though I asked you to go and do a homework, but it's very difficult for us to figure it out the pattern. But in a system like a supercomputer, it is easy to figure it out. And the last one is another understanding, the use of third-party AI models without a clear understanding of the training process and potential vulnerability. This is called the supply chain trust issues. essentially you blindly believe that when whatever you're getting, the model from outside is safe for you. Right? It's even today's problem, right? You take a code from an open source. You blindly believe that one, okay, this is a great for me to do that. But as soon as you install it into the system, you know that when your pop-up machine, all the systems will start popping up saying that, oh, there is a threat found, there is a system having a malware attack. Systems are coming in, right? The same problem even happened in the AI world also. Now, the difference here it is, this is the models which matters. You can buy the models, you can take the models from an industry. That models could change the way the results are going to come out. Now, these are the various challenges which can come in the AI world and something which we have not seen in the traditional way of the computing side. So how do we really defend against these attacks actually, right? And this is the topic of the industry at this point in time. When you talk about cybersecurity in the era of AI, this is the primary topic the teams are looking into. Each of the elements which I talked about, it's not very easy to figure it out, especially when you are in an automated environment. And then how do you figure it out? There are certain guidelines you can put in place. There are certain steps you can put in place in your code, in the way you are adopting the AI to address these issues actually. System vulnerability analysis, one of the critical things. Even today we do that, right? I mean, in an IT industry, if you really look at, every organization is expected to review the CVSS score, which is being published by the various forums with respect to the vulnerability analysis. And anything which is critical, anything which is high, anything which can affect your systems, you are supposed to address it immediately. So this is a standard practice. Now that becomes extremely important when it comes to this AI world, actually, right? Look at the weakness of the system and look at the complexity of the AI systems and try to figure out saying that on what and all can affect the system. Understanding of that is very critical. The industries today, the biggest opportunity is to look at saying that what kind of an AI system it is going to get implemented, what kind of an AI system it is going to get set up, then do a reverse view about that and try to figure out, reverse engineering of that and try to figure out saying that on what can go wrong. Right? If I have, this is the kind of an AI system I'm going to set it up, what are the various threats it can happen? User behavior evaluation. This is another great thing. By continuously repeating the process what you're doing it, somebody may be trying to break your code. And you can actually detect that in your system. Right? So you keep on trying. So nowadays I think you know that when you try to log into a bank account, 5 times you try to do a wrong password, you know that immediately it pops you out, right? Say that okay, next 5 minutes you're not supposed to enter, or next 24 minutes your password has been locked. That's a way of user behavior detection. Now, this is another approach we should be doing it in the AI systems in order to prevent it from looking at the behavior at which the user is putting a prompt, looking at the behavior at which the user is using this data, and put a restrictions behind that. Entry point identification. This is essentially, again, wherever you are actually introducing this code changes, wherever you are introducing these model changes, understanding saying that on what and all it can impact, how is the ecosystem going to look like, what kind of an outcome you are expecting it, what kind of input you are going to provide it, full understanding about the entry point, understanding of the entry point identification. And the last but not the least, network traffic surveillance. This is critical even today, not be only for the AI purpose, even for a traditional computing as well as the AI. Network violations is the biggest threat you will see it. How generally you get a malware, right? So you either get it through network, when you download some content, or through some other soft copy or maybe some of the CDs which we try to install it actually. I mean, how many people really use CD nowadays? Hardly, right? So it's most of the time it is coming from the network. So understanding the network is your bottleneck. Network can become your the entry problem or for the violations. It's important for you to then put together some kind of right firewalls behind that, to have some kind of checks behind that for any data which is coming to the network is being properly sanitized before it's been consumed inside your code. So these are some of the high-level steps which you can take in order to prevent it. Now, as I mentioned, this is an evolving industry. This is an evolving way of figuring it out, saying how the security can be addressed in an AI world. There is no final answer at this point in time, because AI itself, if you really look at the kind of, while AI is, as a subject has been for the last 5 decades, it has been very active. The real trigger for the AI really happened when? Or when people started actively assuming there's something AI is knocking my door is when? 2022. right? When you started seeing this GPT, the transformers come into the picture, right? So till that point, it was more of an enterprise problem. Once the transformers started, GPT started coming in, it has become more of a consumer problem, right? Now it is evolving to make sure that every industry today is evolving to trying to figure out that how they can protect it. Now you had transformers, you have a GPT, which is used as for your generative AI. Now the next gen is coming in. What is that? Agentic AI. What is agentic AI is really doing? Agentic AI, while generative AI is primarily focused on generating the content based on the inputs and based on what you really require it is only providing the input. While the agentic AI will take that input and can even do actions for you. That's where it becomes more tricky. Think about a scenario where the AI is taking over the whole workload, which is what agentic AI will be doing it actually. Then if it is corrupted, it has a data leak, it has a data poisoning, the whole outcome is going to differ. Generative AI, at least you have a control saying that, okay, I am finally going to get the data, I can take my human mind to decide whether that's the right data or wrong data. But when it comes to agentic AI, you don't have an action, it has already taken the action for you. You are doomed at that point in time if there is a corruption there, right? So this is the high level about the AI systems and the security environment in the AI systems. So I'm going to switching out to my next topic. So before that, I wanted to hear any questions you have or anything which you wanted to talk about it. Okay, so if there are no questions, well, let's switch on to another interesting, oh, go ahead.
Most of the LLMs are censored, right? And it also depends on training set. When you said about the malware generation, so like when you said about the malware generation through LLM or like any agentic AI, most of them do not give the output, right? And most of the malware out there aren't like properly analyzed. You do not have the source code. That doesn't like, there is no data basically.
Not really, right? So what you're really talking about, what we are seeing commercially outside available.
Yeah.
But as an enterprise world, if you really look at, you could easily create an LLM in your system. True. So you have the right set of the backend available,
yeah,
which is essentially the kind of computing powers you have it.
Yeah.
You could create a model of yourself. And you could implant that model along with the rest of the bigger LLM model actually.
But there is not much of source code of malwares, that too, especially the recent ones.
There is not much of a source code of malware.
Yeah, we do not have much data.
No. So when you say a malware here, it is not that you are creating an LLM for malware. That's not what the point.
Yeah.
The point is in an LLM, it could have a malware which has been part of the whole of the LLM dataset. You are not creating an LLM for the malware. Yes, yeah. That's essentially you're trying to say you are creating a repository of all the malware code. No, yeah. That is not the point here. Okay. The point here is the LLM uses a large amount of data, and there could be malware in that. It could be triggered in such a way that it could create a malware inside that.
Okay.
Right? It's essentially the way you operate in that one. Okay, there could be in areas where it could be trained, it could be corrupted, so that you will have a malware getting formed as part of the LLM, and that could be used for an external purpose actually.
Okay, yeah, if you think about
it. It is not like that, okay, you have a large repository of all the malware, you create an LLM of malware. No, not that way.
I was
Unless somebody is really into the dark web, they don't want to do that actually.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You need to be a little more louder.
What kind of solutions has HP come up with to mitigate such attacks on LLMs?
What kind of solutions HP has come up with to mitigate on?
Yes.
Yes. So there are, when you look at these attacks are at the different levels, right? So I will touch upon that a little later when we talk about the different layers of architecture which will come into play here. A lot of time, there are two elements. One is the software-based solutions which can protect these, all these kind of attacks. Second is in the hardware level enablement. Most of the time, it is easier to prevent this kind of a manipulation at the hardware layer itself. I'll talk about that as part of the PQC, how some of the PQC elements, as well as some of the NIST-based FIPS 140/3 level 3 level capabilities, which is helping to prevent some of these attacks which is going in actually. I'll talk about that. Okay, so let's quickly get into the next topic. This is actually one of my favorite topics because as part of the server business, so I run a server business as part of the firmware group. We have a lot of touch points with this particular topic, which especially we call this post-quantum cryptography. But before I get into post-quantum cryptography, I want to just touch upon what is quantum computing all about, right? And quantum cryptography. How many of you have heard of quantum cryptography and quantum computing? Okay, pretty good. So all of you knows that. So I don't have to spend too much of time here. But still, so let me just quickly get into some interesting fact. So you started hearing a lot of news in the industry nowadays talking about cryptos are getting broken. In the news which is talking about there are attacks imminent on your bank accounts. The bank lockers are getting broken because of the keys are not secure any further, right? And the whole hype is getting into reality at this point in today, right? Now, what is all this hype all about? This all hype is all about how can you bring in a system which can break any kinds of codes, any kind of crypto codes. And that's the quantum computing which you're really talking about. And how do we prevent that? This is an entirely new era of computing, right? Have you guys seen these pictures? Some of you probably have, right? So now, this is not really a computer which you think of a traditional computer. What is a quantum computer really is? Now, a computer, when you really talk about, okay, you have seen the laptops, you have seen the servers, you have seen even supercomputers, you can see it, which is what? A bigger version of the servers, what you're trying to put it. A supercomputer is nothing but you assemble tens of thousands of servers together to do one task. That's what a supercomputer is all about, right? But when it comes to quantum computer, it is an entirely different segment altogether. You can't really say that this is an evolution of existing computer to a new computer. What really happens here is this works on the philosophy, works in the principles of physics rather than electronics and the mathematics, right? That's where the quantum really coming to the play here. The quantum bits or the qubits is the processing enabling immense speed and new capabilities beyond the classical computers can do it. Now, how do you really do that actually? When you say qubit is nothing but, could be an atom, could be an electron, could be a photon. Now, how do you control these electrons or a photons or maybe an ionic particle? That's where the computer becomes interesting here. While you use the word computer here so that it can process enormous amount of data, beyond that, it is nothing to do with the existing computer, right? It's an entirely different dimension altogether we are talking about, which is beyond our regular imagination, right? And these, the computers harness this principle of the quantum physics or the quantum dynamics actually, or quantum mechanics. There are two elements in that, superposition and entanglement, right? How many of you are Avengers fan here? Okay, great. So you heard these words pretty often, right? In the movies at least. Entanglement and superposition, right? We'll talk about that a little bit later. But these are the two fundamental philosophy or fundamental physical properties based on which the whole quantum mechanics has been put in place and this quantum computer has been put in place. So when you look at this image, whatever you're seeing in the top, whatever the wires, whatever you're seeing is just for transmitting the data. The real computer is just a small chip. But the rest, the whole element, what you're seeing is cryogenic setup. What is cryogenic setup? Keeping the temperature almost to the near 0 Kelvin, or they call the millikelvins. Now, why do you have to take the temperature to such a lower level? In order to disintegrate the particle, right? So you are really talking about taking an ion, taking an electron or an ion, and spin it up or spin it down, right? So spinning up is, you can easily call it as a, say, 0, reverse also possible. Spinning down, you call it 1. What is going to be spinning up and down? So you're seeing the Earth's, very simple way to imagine this is, you're seeing the Earth's magnetic field, right? It goes from north to south, right? So even when you take an electron, it has its own magnetic field. So the electrons which move from the north to south, that's the one side, that is called the spinning of down. Goes from south to north, you call the spinning up. That is spinning 1. So if you map that to the traditional computers, the bits 0 and 1, if you map the to traditional computers, the 0 and 1, the 2 bits which you talk about, is equivalent to the spinning up of electron and spinning down of the electron. Now, how do you create that kind of a system, actually? That's where the cryogenics come into the play. You bring the systems to such a low temperature so that you can disintegrate the particle to get into the ion, and you can start measuring that. Now, how do you measure that? How do you even spin up or spin down? Again, you have to use the rays. You have to use a laser. You have to use the photons to hit the particle, and then particle either spin up or spin down. Again, it's all physics. An interesting story to talk about, right? Now, the point I'm trying to say is that when you talk about quantum mechanics or the quantum computers, it's not the traditional way of talking about zeros and ones. They are not the bits here. It's an entirely different dimensions to talk about it, actually, right? So the Willow chip, whatever you see, which has been announced by the Google, that small 4 centimeter square chip can process 10 septillion years of work in 5 minutes, right? Septillion, you can count the number of zeros there, by the way. So now the point here is, the kind of calculations these atomic particles can do it. How would they do that? By superpositioning. Sorry about that. So the superpositioning and the entanglement capabilities helps you to process things in parallel. Right? That's where the supercomputers becomes interesting, and interesting for especially the crypto world, actually. Cubic. So this has been essentially visualized as a block sphere, because it's a 3-dimensional parameter. There is no one element there. There is no zeros and 1. It can exist 0, 1, or together. It can be a mix of zeros and ones, right? That's what essentially you talk about qubit, actually. There is no one predefined state unless it is started measured, unless you start touching it. Then you can measure it, and then you can get into a value 0 or 1. But otherwise, it exists in a superposition world. So what is superposition? Is I can represent both 0 and 1 simultaneously, and that's where parallelism comes into play here. And the second element, entanglement. What is that entanglement means? The 2 systems, or 2 qubits, can form a quantum system, and they can entangle together. That means each of them represents the other state. So if one is going to be north, another one is going to be south. So you don't need really to be measured both the elements in order to come up with a conclusion. If you can measure one, you can determine what is the state of the other one, right? So recently I was watching one interesting video where they were talking about entanglement. This is the easiest way to remember is, so you have the left shoe and right shoe. You put both in 2 boxes and hand it over to 2 separate people, right? So that's the state at which these 2 boxes are in entangled state. You're not opening the box, right? You don't know which one has left shoe, which one has the right shoe. This is in the state of entanglement. Now as soon as you open one of the shoes, you exactly know what is the other shoe, isn't it? Right? So, and there is no distance limitation. One person could be sitting in the North Pole, another person could be in the South Pole. Still, I know what is the other person has it, because I have the left shoe, that means the other person has the right shoe. These 2 shoes are in the entangled state. So this is a very silly way to think that when 2 electrons or 2 qubits are in the entangled states, which forms as the basis of computation. And the last one is a measurement. Any force you apply on it, it settles down to either zeros or 1. As long as there's no force, it is an entangled state. It is in a superposition state. Entangled superposition state will come to a conclusion only when a force is been applied. What is the force in the case of a shoes? You opening the shoe. If you don't open the shoe, it is an entangled state. You really don't know whether it is zeros or one. You could be a zero, you could be a left shoe, you could have a right shoe. You have no visibility into that. As soon as you opened it, you know that on what shoe you has it. Take that philosophy a little more extreme way, right? That's what really the whole story comes about. Another way to look at it is that the thinking qubit is like a spinning of the coin. You take a coin and you spin it. As long as it is spinning, you really don't know whether it's left or right. It's in a superposition state. It can be one, it can be zero, anytime, the direction if you really look at it. As soon as it falls down, either it becomes heads or a tail, right? So that's another way to look at how the spinning is happening. The timeline, if you really look at, by 2030, how many of you heard of Y2K? Y2K, yeah, I mean, except this front row. So Y2K is, so when we started the year 2000, with the number 00 coming at the end, we all had this fear factor, saying all the computers are going to break down, right? And then there is a lot of effort put behind to save the industries, or save the computers, which has, when the year becomes 00, right? And you can imagine in 2000, the number of connected users in the internet is somewhere around 300 to maybe 400 million. That's what the number we are really talking about. Today is in billions, 20 to 30 billions connected devices, the amount of data getting transferred in petabytes, right? Now, see the extremity of the impact it can cause if that kind of damage happens. 2030, there's an expectation that the keys which are used to sign and encode or encrypt, which we call the RSA 2048, can be broken by a quantum computer. Now, 2030 is not very far, right? It's another 5 years, another 4 years, pretty much. And there's an expectation. Then so all the government agencies, if you really look at, are working towards preventing that to happen, actually. To come up with mechanisms, come up with solutions which can stop getting into this attacking mode. Now, it's still 5 years down the line. We really don't know whether there's a computer is going to be available in the 5 years down the line which can break it, because it requires a massive amount of quantum computing in order to break that even today, right? Then why are we worried so much? Why the quantum cryptography is becoming so prevalent today is because of the red marked item, HNDL. Harvest now, decrypt later. What does it mean? It means today the bad actors are collecting the data from you. They're preserving this data, and they can, whenever there is a system is available to break it, they are going to use this data against you. That's the harvest now, decrypt later. This is the reason why today, even though there is no quantum computer today available, which can really break any of the security code, agencies, government agencies are really worried about the data even today is because of that reason. They want, starting now, the data has to be preserved so that when a quantum computer really comes to the play, it cannot break it. So keep this very clear. Harvest now, decrypt later. That's the philosophy on which the whole post-quantum cryptography has been built on. So what's the big difference between the classical and? So first one, you are very know, zeros and ones. Qubits is a 0, 1, or can be both. Processing power, in the case of it's always a linear, actually, depending upon the number of transistors you have it. What is really today's computer? It's all transistors. Transistors is what? Either zeros or ones. You create a logic by putting multiple gates in that, right? You create a logic by using gates, and each gate have one or two transistors. So it's a linear in nature. So how do you measure the processing capability? The maximum number of transistors, maximum processing capability, maximum logic you can put in. When it comes to quantum computing, it's no more linear, it's exponential in nature. Each qubit you add to the quantum system, the potential of that particular system exponentially increases, actually, not a linearly increased. And another interesting fact you need to know about this is not all problems can be solved with a quantum computer. So while we say a quantum computer is amazing, it has a lot of capability to solve it, there could be scenarios, there could be situations with quantum computers can be slower than the traditional computers. It is faster for specific problems. Not all the problems can be solved with quantum computers, actually. But cryptography is one problem quantum computer can clearly solve it because it is based on a mathematical logic. Okay, so the last one. Theoretically, RSA 2048 would take trillions of years for a classical computer to break it, right? Again, I will just touch upon how that works. But in a quantum computer, just minutes. So what are the challenges we are going to see that? AES, which is used primarily for symmetric key, purpose is primarily for encryption purpose. It will not be sustaining with current numbers, actually. You need to increase the size. The 2048 will not survive in the quantum world, actually. SHA-2 and SHA-3, this is primarily used for hashing functions. You cannot create with the current SHA outputs will not be good enough in order to survive in the quantum world. You need to have higher outputs required. RSA is no more secure. ECDSA, no more secure. DSA, no more secure. Right? This is the world of quantum computer is going to end up in. Now let's get into why so, right? I mean, we talked about these are all not going to survive. This is where the mathematical numbers will come in, mathematical logic will come into the play here. Anybody knows how RSA works? Anyone? So RSA is based on a very simple philosophy. That philosophy is you create a number as a product of two prime numbers, right? What is a prime number? I don't have to tell you all this, right? You're all engineers. So if you can create a number which is a large enough number, when you say 2048 bits is what we are talking about. You create a 2048 number and create a prime out of it, create a prime numbers with the two prime numbers, it is impossible to break. When you get a two prime numbers, you can create the key. That's easy to do it, right? Just multiply it. But if you get the multiplied number, converting the prime number of such a large number is almost impossible. That's where the today's computers take trillions of years, and that's where RSA is so strong today. So the factor here is, so if someone can factor the number n, right, into P and Q, where P and Q are the two large prime numbers, as part of Euler's quotient, again, some of the mathematical equations, so I will not get into details. You can Google it. This allows you can easily get the private key, and once you know the private key, you can break the code. That's the beauty of a computing capability which can break this code. And today's computers cannot get into a state where they can get into these two prime numbers. When you're talking about a number like 2048-bit number, converting that into two prime numbers is absolutely difficult at this point in time. But how quantum computer is going to do that? That's where one of the mathematician called Shor, he arrived at an algorithm which any number is given to you with the large amount of computing capability, you can convert into a prime numbers. That's called Shor's algorithm. So with the help of the Shor's algorithm and an amazing quantum computing capability, you will be able to get any number into the prime numbers. And as soon as you know the prime numbers, you know how to decode the key. As simple as that. This is where quantum cryptography comes to the play here. So quantum cryptography, when you really talk about the word quantum cryptography, this is not the traditional way you're really talking about it. So today's, you know what is OSI layers, right? So the 7 layers of the networking, 7 layers, you are aware of it. While the quantum cryptography really comes into all the terminologies, all the topics which we're talking about in the quantum cryptography world, these are all the physical world. They are nowhere in the other layers of the stack. So what you're really talking about the lowmost layer, how it is being implemented. And this is somebody was asking what HP is doing. I'll touch upon that when it comes to why this cryptography, how can you protect it actually. So these are some of the layers which we'll talk about. So you have a quantum hardware, error corrections, which is essentially to figure it out, saying that because in the world of the quantum mechanics, there's no real absolute zeros and one. It's always a probability. So when you have a probability, what can happen? It can happen in error, right? So probability is always 60-30. Oh, I have a probability of, I mean, who will win the match? 50-50 you say. That means 50% chance there is a wrong, what you're trying to say, correct? So in the world of probabilities, always there's an error. And higher the error, bad the machine is. So the whole attempt today in the world, in order to reduce this error correction. And the whole quantum mechanics is today is focused on how do I reduce the errors in the probability which is being given by the system. So everything comes in the hardware layer. And what is post-quantum cryptography really, algorithms really stands for? So you saw what is a quantum computer can do. You saw then how it can break a system. And you know what is really the cryptography really talk about, quantum cryptography really talking about, right? Now what is really post-quantum cryptography? Post-quantum cryptography is once you are in the world of quantum computers, you need to have a systems which cannot be broken by that. And that systems you need it today. Reason is what? You harvest today, decrypt later. So if you are able to harvest this today, it will be broken. So today onwards, you try to prevent the systems from getting that kind of an information, which even a quantum computers cannot address it. That's where really the post-quantum cryptography is really playing a role. And that's one of the reasons why most of the industries, especially the government agencies, starting with the NIST, which is the National Institute of Information Security in US, they have devised timelines when the product should be ready, what kind of signatures should be there in each of this product which is being used, and what's the timeline for each of these cryptographic signatures, encoding, and encryption approaches. So this post-quantum cryptography, PQC really runs on a classical computers, so PQC can even run on today's computer. It doesn't require a quantum computer. So what is really PQC stands for? You are essentially encoding and encrypting the code and signing the code in such a way that when finally, even if this data gets used by a quantum computer, it cannot be broken. And that can be done today in the classic computers itself. It doesn't have to be a quantum computer to break that, right? And there are multiple algorithms that are being used. And these are based on the lattice-based secure key, hash-based digital signature, isogeny-based systems, code-based systems, and multivariate-based systems. These are the different algorithms that have been used to come up with the PQC, the encryption methods actually, right? And each of them is a vast subject by itself. This is more for just for your awareness. And most of the popular ones are either the hash-based or the lattice-based. These are the two things properly, a lot of investigations are happening today in this world. Now, why are we doing all this? Why it matters? Right? It matters because the quantum computing threads easily can break the traditional cryptography. We talked about that. And who are the actors who can really take advantage of this? It can be nation states, it can be cyber criminals, it can be even insiders in the industry. And it will affect every side of the industries. While I highlighted 4 primary area potential targeted industries, it is not limited to these 4. Every industry can be a victim of the cyber attack if you're not protected properly. So be future ready. Be ready to adopt, understand, and learn about this topic. And tomorrow, the world is waiting for you to come and provide a solution. So we in HP, somebody was asking. So we have a server which is called Gentle ProLiant Computing Server. So this is industry's first server, we are the first manufacturer of the servers to meet the requirements of the FIPS 143, Level 3, and CNSA 2.0. These are the certain standards put by the NIST in order to protect this data. So there are a lot of algorithms, a lot of encryption methods being used, which is expected to be starting from what you call silicon root of trust. Silicon root of trust is nothing but the basic hardware onwards, it is being protected. You cannot tamper the system even starting from the basic chip level, right? This security, today the cyber world is so complex. People could modify the data at any level. You ship a hardware from your factory to the customer site. On the way, it could get corrupted. Somebody could take the system, they could modify some content in that, right? Now you put a firmware into the system. The firmware could have a malware in that. How do you protect that? How do you protect that? So there are a lot of standards that's been put in place. So this is one of the approach we are taking. We call the silicon root of trust. Starting from the silicon layer, there is a security has been implemented in every layer. So the way it works like this, when a silicon comes up first, it first do a self-check. It tries to figure out saying that, okay, am I sane? Is anybody tampered with me? If it is there, it will not allow to boot further. It stops there. Then the system comes up, or it starts coming up. The first firmware it fetches. First firmware is trying to do, the first firmware itself is it clean? It checks for the keys and encodings and the kind of the PQC-based algorithms it should look at and try to figure out saying that, am I good? If I am good, okay, let me load the now system to the, let me load the, say, BIOS into the system. You load the BIOS, right? And there is something called BMC, which is the baseboard management controller, which is essentially does all these functionalities. So you load the BMC first, and the BMC checks itself, saying that, am I sane? Hey, did someone corrupt me? It checked that, and if something is gone wrong, it is not detecting that, okay, the key is supposed to expected to be there, it's not right, there is a mismatch in the numbers, a mismatch in the CRC, or a mismatch in the signature, what it is trying to see. It stops there. It doesn't allow the system to boot. So there's a multiple layers of security has been put in the system to make sure that, okay, it is not getting tampered with. And many of these things are as per the NIST standard, and FIPS 143 is one of the latest standard, and level 3 is the highest level of certifications you can get it in order from the security standpoint. Okay, so let me stop it here. So 1 hour. Hope it was something useful for you. So now I'll quickly take another 5 minutes to just quickly show you some of the world is evolving into the cybersecurity requirements and what kind of opportunities we have it in the cybersecurity world. I don't think I need to go through all of this, but just to highlight saying this is an area which is evolving like anything. I can say that. Irrespective of what happens in the cyber industry, happens into the various elements of computing industry, this is one area which is going to remain always at the top. So if you're pursuing that, congratulations, right? So security analyst, AI specialist, ethical hackers, that's also a job. How many of you know that ethical hacking is a job? Good. A lot of industries look for these people. Why? If you can really hack it, you know that when there's somebody else can also hack it, right? So then you know how to prevent that, how to protect that. So you put measures to protect that. And what kind of skills you really start looking at it actually. Of course, programming and data analysis, very critical for you to learn that. Understanding of the protocols. When I say protocols, it's not just a cursory understanding, it's more of a depth understanding about it. When you say FIPS 143 level 3, what does it really means? Visibility into those capabilities. And of course, AI and machine learning knowledge. Because if you have to break an AI threat, you need to be a smarter AI, right? So that's. And another area where you see that interdisciplinary opportunities, because it's not directly from a security standpoint, from the cloud security analyst, IoT security analyst, that AI ethics-focused responsibilities and jobs, and the compliance collaboration. So these are all the interdisciplinary opportunities because there are multiple things come together. It's not just the security alone. You need to understand the domain as well as the security as a combination. I think you need to learn here. With that, let me stop here. Any questions? No? Did I bore you enough? Yeah, go ahead. correct. So the best way I would say is that when getting an understanding about these three areas, right?
Is comparatively different when compared to cloud. AI security is comparatively different when compared to classical cybersecurity approaches. So the basic nature and foundation of the field is different. So existing certifications, would it be sufficient to have a deep understanding?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, as I was starting in the first session, right, the kind of threats which is going to come in the AI world is entirely different because security threats has changed, the security measures also has been changed. So it's important for you to understand saying what measures are the new one which is you need to start focusing on. That's the reason when I said that AI machine learning knowledge is required is primarily because from in the AI world, the kind of exposure you are going to have in the kind of the complexity of the AI systems is important for you to understand how it can be broken, right? So when you're learning the cybersecurity element, you also need to parallelly learn about the AI's capabilities. So that will help you to understand in what and all ways it can be broken, and then you start reapplying that back to this knowledge and say that, okay, if this is being built in that kind of complexity, what kind of knowledge I should bring in order to correct that. So it's not a direct, I won't be saying that you learn X, Y, Z, you'll become an expert in that. It's very difficult in this space. The classical learning is absolutely required because classical learning still matters. So you saw the one on the slide where the blue and the orange split up of the activities involved. So the classical learning is still an important learning for you to understand the whole cybersecurity environment. On top of that one, understand the complexity of the AI and look at saying that what kind of different attacks can come in and try to understand that more from that perspective. Because there's no real course has created to say that, okay, you'll become an AI security expert kind of thing, right? Still the course is always focused on the fundamentals, which is the cybersecurity fundamentals. Then you apply the AI complexities on top of that one to learn at this point in time. At some point in time, you will have better course material for that one, but today it is still evolving, I would say.
So do you think like post-quantum cryptography can serve as a solution for LLM security in particular? Has there been any solutions done so far in this space?
Absolutely, right? Because what is this LLM really, security is really coming to? The large amount of data, how do you keep it secure, right? Which is what it comes to. Now, how do you keep it something secure? How do you keep your valuables secure? You put in a vault, right? And the vault is now properly coded, and nobody knows the password. It's always safe there. Same philosophy you apply here. You have a large amount of data in the LLM. How do you keep this data sane? How do you make sure that data is not getting corrupted? You need to have proper vaults in the system to make sure that this data is not getting corrupted. And how do you create that vault? Using solutions like a PQC. That's how the connection is coming into play.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so if there are no other questions, let me stop it here. And thank you for listening to me. And I hope at least you have some learning, or at least some new terminologies which you can go and Google further and learn a bit more. This is, as I started with, this is one of the vast ocean you will see. And it's very difficult to figure out saying, where should I dip, right? So you can always start with the surface layer and then go deeper actually in whichever areas you're interested in. Whether you want to get in the cryptography, whether you want to get to cybersecurity, whether you get to specifically on the AI side, start identifying which is of your interest area and start reading more about that and learn more about that. Thank you.
On behalf of PS University, I extend our heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Manoj for his insightful and inspiring talk on the theme of cybersecurity in the age of Gen AI and post-quantum cryptography. I request Professor Prasad to kindly hand over the memento to Mr. Manoj as a token of our gratitude. Thank you, sir. I would also like to sincerely thank Mr. Somshekhara S. for arranging this session and for his continued engagement with PS University. A special word of thanks to Professor Prasad B. Honawali for his constant encouragement to build strong industry-academia collaborations. I extend sincere thanks to Professor Charan Raj for looking after the arrangements that made today's event possible. I thank the ISFCR office team, Ms. Purnima, Ms. Navneeta, Ms. Deepa, and the teaching assistants for the Computer Network Security course for their support. I also take this opportunity to thank the IT and operations team for their seamless support in enabling the session from both here and online. And finally, a heartfelt thanks to all our students for your patient listening and for the interactive discussion. With that, I conclude today's session. Thank you, everyone. Sir, is this yours? Yeah. I'll look. So we will have a group photo once he comes there. So we'll just take a photograph, and after that, we'll have the attendance, and then you guys can leave, okay?